Little Johnny comes home from school and he asks his dad, what is the difference between theory and reality? He says, all right, well, how about you go ask your mom if she would have sex with another man for $1,000,000? So little Johnny goes and does as he's told, and his mom says, well, yeah, I think I would. I really think I would. So little Johnny goes back and tells his dad that his mom would, and his dad says, all right, now go ask your sister if she would have sex with a man for $1,000,000. So little Johnny goes and asks his sister, and she says, oh, heck yeah, I would, for sure. So little Johnny goes back and tells his dad that his sister would have sex with a man for $1,000,000, and his dad says, well, little Johnny, says, now you know the difference. He says, in theory, we're sitting here on $2,000,000, but in reality, we're living with a couple of whores. Little Johnny's teacher asked him if he knew what sex was. Little Johnny stands up and he says, sex is a temptation caused by a sensation where a guy puts his location into a girl's destination to increase the population of the next generation. Now, do you understand my explanation, or do you need a demonstration? Little Johnny gets on the bus and sits right behind the bus driver because he's always getting in trouble. He starts mumbling to himself. He says, well, if my dad is a bull and my mom is a cow, well, that would make me a little bull. And if my dad was a rooster and my mom was a hen, well, that would make me a little chick. The bus driver's already sick and tired of listening to little Johnny. He says, all right, little Johnny, how about this? If your dad is a drunk and your mom's a whore, well, what does that make you? Well, Johnny smiles and he says, a bus driver. Little Johnny's sitting at his desk and he's sitting there fidgeting in the back and he's like scratching himself and he just can't stop. The teacher goes up there. She goes, little Johnny, what's going on? He says, why are you fidgeting in your desk? And he kind of whispers. He says, I was circumcised last week and it itches real bad. She's like, well, go to the office, call your mom, and ask her what you should do. So he goes to the office. He comes back about 10 minutes later, and he goes back to his desk, and all the girls are screaming like, ah! And he sits back down, and the teacher comes back and goes, well, little Johnny, well, what happened? He says, well, my mom told me that if I could stick it out till noon, she'd be in to pick me up. It was Johnny's last day on the job as a mailman. As he was making his rounds, people were giving him candy and cards, a little bit of money, just things saying happy retirement. Well, he got to his final place, and the lady invites him in with a candlelit dinner. And she says, well, why don't you come upstairs and have dessert? So he goes, follows her upstairs, and she gives him the best sex of his life. And afterwards, she gives him $1. He says, well, what's the dollar for? He said, well, that was my husband's idea. She said, my idea was to make you dinner. But when I asked my husband what I should give you for your retirement, he said, screw him, give him $1. You're welcome. Little Johnny comes home from school and asks his dad, what is the difference between theory and reality? His dad says, well, why don't you go ask your mother if she would have sex with another man for $1,000,000? So he goes and asks her, and she says, well, you know, I think I would. So little Johnny goes back and tells his dad. He says, well, why don't you go ask your sister who just came home from college if she would have sex with another man outside of her boyfriend? So he goes and asks her, and she says, heck yeah, I would. Are you crazy? So little Johnny goes back and tells his dad, and his dad says, well, now you know the difference between theory and reality. In theory, we're sitting on $2,000,000. But in reality, we're living with a couple of prostitutes. Jimmy and Johnny worked together, and they both ended up getting laid off at the same time. So they went down to the unemployment office to get paid. Well, Jimmy was asked first, well, what is your position? He says, I'm a panty stitcher. He goes, I stitch in elastic into the women's panties and thongs. She looks up panty stitcher, and it looks like it's unskilled labor. She says, all right, I'm going to give you $80 a week. So Johnny comes in, and she says, well, what's your position? He says, I'm a diesel fitter. She looks up diesel fitter, and it looks like it's skilled labor. So she says, I'm going to give you $160 a week. Well, when Jimmy found this out, he was livid. He goes back to the lady. He says, well, what do you mean? What happened here? She goes, well, a panty stitcher is unskilled labor and a diesel fitter is skilled labor. He goes, how can that be? He says, I'm the one that stitches the elastic in. All he does is grab the panties, puts them over the top of his head, and says, diesel fitter. Johnny and his girlfriend are going to a costume party. His girlfriend comes downstairs, and she's wearing nothing but boots. And she says, what are you doing? She says, I'm going as Puss in Boots. He says, okay. He goes into the kitchen, cuts a potato in half, and puts it right over the top of his pecker. He comes back out in the living room. She says, well, what are you going as? He says, well, if you can go as Puss in Boots, I can go as dictator. Teacher brings in a bag, and she says, all right, kids, I'm going to put my hand in this bag, and I want you to guess what I'm holding on to. She said, the first item is round, red, and plump. Little Johnny raises his hand. She goes, no, I can't pick on him. He'll say something perverted. So she says, little Susie. Little Susie says, tomato? She says, no, it's an apple, but I like the way you're thinking. She goes, the second item that I'm holding is long, yellow, and hard. Little Johnny raises his hand. She goes, I can't pick on him. She said, little Billy. Little Billy says, a squash? She says, no, it's not a squash. It's a banana, but I like the way you're thinking. Little Johnny's all mad. He says, all right, Teach, because I got my hand in my pocket. He says, guess what I'm holding on to? It's round, it's hard, it's got a head on it. Teacher says, disgusting. He says, no, it's a quarter, but I like the way you're thinking. Teacher asks little Johnny, there's 4 doves sitting on a fence. If you shoot one of those doves off, how many are left? Well, Johnny thinks a little bit, and he says, well, there'd be none. Once you shot the first one, the other 3 would fly away. Teacher says, well, the correct answer is 3, but I like the way you're thinking. Little Johnny says, well, I got one for you, Teach. There's 3 women that went and got ice cream cones, and one of the ladies is licking the ice cream off the side. The other lady's biting the ice cream off the top, and the other lady's sucking the ice cream off the top. Which one of those ladies is married? Teacher gets a little red in the face, and she says, well, I would assume it's the one that's sucking the ice cream off the top. Little Johnny smiles and said, well, the correct answer is the one with the ring on her finger, the wedding ring. But I like the way you're thinking. Hey, little Johnny walks in on his dad while he's taking a shower. And he sees his pecker, and he says, Dad, what's that? He says, that's my nerve. Little Johnny says, wow. He says, don't worry, one day yours will be just as big as mine. And little Johnny didn't think anything of it, and he went to school the next day. Little Johnny raises his hand because he had to go to the bathroom. The teacher says, no, you're going to have to wait. So little Johnny waits about 5 minutes, and he says, teacher, I really got to go to the bathroom. She says, no, you're going to have to wait. Well, another 5 minutes go by, and Johnny can't wait any longer, so he gets up, goes over to the garbage can over in the corner, and starts peeing right in there. Teacher says, little Johnny, you sure do have some nerve. Little Johnny smiles and says, you think I do? You should see my dad's. Little Johnny's teacher said, today, class, I want you to give me a word that ends in T-O-R and that eats something. Little Susie raises her hand. She says, alligator. Teacher says, oh, that's a really good one, little Susie, and alligators eat lots of things. Little Billy raises his hand, and he says, predator. Teacher says, oh, that's a really, really good one. She says, predators, they'll eat anything. Little Johnny raises his hand, and he says, vibrator. Teacher says, oh, little Johnny, yes, it does end in T-O-R, but it doesn't eat anything. Little Johnny says, oh, ma'am, you're wrong. My mom's always screaming about how that vibrator eats batteries like crazy. Teacher says, little Johnny, what do you want to be when you grow up? He says, I want to be a billionaire. And then I'm going to go to the most expensive club in Vegas, and I'm going to find me a hoe. And then I'm going to buy her a skyrise apartment. I'm going to buy her a Ferrari. I'm going to buy her a Lamborghini. I'm going to buy her all kinds of jewelry. And I'm going to buy her a beachfront house on Malibu. And we're going to have sex 3 to 5 times a day. Teacher's a little perplexed by this, and she says, okay, little Susie, what do you want to be when you grow up? Little Susie smiles, and she says, I want to be Johnny's hoe. Little Johnny gets on the bus and gets in trouble again by the bus driver. Bus driver says, little Johnny, I'm calling your mother. He says, you can't call my mother. My mother's dead. But don't you worry. Once I get on up into heaven, I'll let her know that I was naughty today. Well, this upset the bus driver even more, and he says, oh, yeah, little Johnny, how do you know that your mother went to heaven and she didn't go to hell? Well, Johnny says, oh, well, come to think of it, then you can tell her once you get there. Hey, Dad, want to hear a joke?
Yep.
So little Susie comes home, and she says, Mom, little Johnny showed me his pecker today. And she said, what? I said, yeah, it reminded me of a peanut. She goes, oh, because it was so small? She said, no, it was so salty. One day, little Johnny runs into the living room where his mom was watching TV, and he's all concerned, and he says, Mommy, how can you live without eating? She says, well, what do you mean? I eat every single day. He said, well, I heard Daddy talking to Uncle Billy, and he said that you haven't swallowed since college.